Okay, finish my hair with me as I tell you the story of how I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that my husband was sent by God to be my husband.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be watching a set of videos together where ladies share how they knew their husband was the one. I'm excited to share my thoughts and reactions with you, and I hope you join in on the conversation. But as usual, before we get started, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. Now, let's dive in and see what these ladies have to say.
Okay, finish my hair with me as I tell you the story of how I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that my husband was sent by God to be my husband. I've gotten this question many times and I love telling the story because it's such a simple story. We're just finishing this up. Normally I would be doing a wash and go at this point in the week, but I don't have any product and I have to do my hair to leave the house to get product. So here we are. Okay, so after I had gotten out of a on again, off again situationship, which if you know, you know, probably for about the third time I was getting out of it, I was like, okay, all right, Lord, I get it. Like, this is not happening. This is not the person I'm marrying. I get it. I get it. So I said, if you don't show me clearly that somebody else is my husband, then I will be waiting for this other person forever. So I said, God, when you send me my husband, I want him to say these three things. I said, I want him to know immediately that I'm his wife. I want him to see me and know that I'm his wife. I said, I want him to see me and say, whoa. That was the word. I said, whoa. And the third one I'm not actually gonna share. Fast forward 2 years, when I met my husband at a sound check that he wasn't actually even supposed to be at. And he was introduced kind of in passing to us, but then he later found me on Facebook after searching for me. He found me and I was at a, like, I didn't believe in dating really. I just never liked the idea of going out with someone that I didn't know and getting to know them in that setting. That's just, I've never been a fan of that idea. However, I don't know, something just moved me to do it. I think plans had gotten canceled for me and I was like, okay, well, I've talked to Mark a few times at this point, and I was like, okay, let me just see if Mark is free because I really wanted to go out. And so I did, and he said yes. So we sat down, I swear, maybe 10 minutes into conversation. He says, yeah, when I first saw you, I said, whoa. And immediately I was like, okay. I, in my head, was like, oh, wow, okay. And I didn't know this man. I did not know him, and it didn't seem like he was really my type. I went on, we started dating a little bit, but then he moved. I remember saying to somebody, I can't count Mark out. Like, I cannot count him out, even though, I don't know, it seemed like it was over, like I wasn't really gonna see him again. I knew that I couldn't count him out. And it wasn't until a bit later that he said, the night I saw you, I went home and I told my brother that I had met my wife. And that was it for me. That was like, okay, I'm sure this is it. I'm sure this is it. And then later he said the third thing as well. So I got all of the confirmation that I asked for and all the confirmation that I needed. So yeah, if you want to know, you want to be sure, ask the Lord to send you a sign. He'll do it. Later, I doubted that it was God, even though it was very, very much so God, obviously. But because it went so badly, I was like, okay, this could not have been what God had intended, but it wasn't. That's the thing, is because we stepped out of God's will. We did not do things the right way. And you cannot expect for things to go the way that God intends when you step out of his will. So yeah, that's the story. Now I have to figure out what I'm gonna do with the back of my head because it's looking rough. it's looking mighty dry. Let's see. Oh, that's not bad. Oh, yeah, that works. Okay, I actually decided to put them in like pigtails, which I think is super cute. All right, this is the finished look. Okay, bye.
Please allow God to choose your spouse for you. I'm telling you, it is worth the wait. He thinks of everything. He is in the details. And you don't have to work hard to keep it together because God puts it together and sustains it. What God puts together, no man, not even you, can put us under. Now, I'm not married yet, but I know who I'm going to marry. You know what I'm saying? No, but seriously, I actually met my partner while I was in a toxic relationship. Now, I know some of y'all are like, that's not how God works. He don't do it like that. Don't put him in a box. I was with this guy for 7 months. And while he wasn't like abusive, like physically or verbally or emotionally, sorry, trigger warning to y'all, he was psychologically abusive, but not because of what he was doing, but because of the familiarity of the situation, reinforcing trauma I had already had with my father and every other man after that. So you know how like when you don't heal from the past, you kind of just keep repeating that same situation over and over again until you learn your lesson and then you can exit. Yeah, that's what happened. The unfortunate part was I was actually at the end of learning that lesson, but I was still holding on to the relationship. It was very hard for me to let go of, not because I didn't understand that this wasn't normal and it wasn't okay to be treated like this by this person, but because I was attached to dysfunction and familiarity and that felt safe more than going off into the unknown, which I knew with my new decision and my new perspective was inevitable. So one day I just had to accept the fact that I don't know what I'm doing. And I cried out to the Lord and I asked him to not only break the soul tie with this person, but also to give me a new experience. Because I knew that deciding not to be with him meant that I was either going to stop dating altogether, which is what I purposed in my heart I was going to do. God had other plans. Or I was going to end up in the same cycle again. Because while I knew better, I still could not do better. And part of the reason why I couldn't do better is because I didn't have any reference points to chart a new future. So I had to let God tell me what was right because all I had, all the data points were psychological abuse, emotional trauma, and rejection, abandonment. That's all I knew. And so I was going to look for that again without trying. So I cried out to the Lord and I literally asked him to change my appetite. I said, God, I will keep picking the same people. I'm coming to you as humbly and sincerely as I know how. And I know that in my heart, while I want something different in my heart is not capable of making that change. I am not able to do this for myself. Can you do it for me? I asked him to change my appetite, cleanse my palate, and to give me a new experience. And lo and behold, literally a week after, God did just that. And now that I am about 6 or 7 months into dating this person, I can honestly say like the experience is nothing like anything I have ever had before. And it surprises me every day, the new ways in which I am able to experience God's love through this person. Like it totally shocks me, guys. So much so that I had to work through shame, feeling of unworthiness, and just overall not feeling prepared for this kind of love. But here's the important part. And me transitioning out of an old relationship that was toxic into a new and healthy one, as you can imagine, there was still a lot of learning that had to be done on my end. I mean, his too, but like more so on my end because I wasn't ready. And it was through that experience that God really showed me how he loves us. That it's through the process of sanctification. It's not just, you need to be ready to come to me. You need to be ready to receive me, and then I will show myself to you. It's you. I can take you out of a bad situation, drop you into a new one, and change you over time, and still love you the same from the moment I met you. And even as I'm learning and unlearning all of these things that are very challenging for me, the person's love for me has not changed. It's been consistent. And I think it comes down to us both fearing the Lord, hearing from the Lord, and then choosing in agreement with what God said. Because it's from that place of choice that we are able to keep relying on God to build a relationship, keep the relationship together, to grow the relationship. And in saying all that, God thinks of everything. The little details, he thinks of everything. And we'll talk more about those details if y'all got questions.
Yes, girl, testimony time. I'm going to tell you how I knew my husband was the one. But before I do that, here's like a little short timeline. So we met at church in 2015. We reconnected in 2018. In February 2019, we became official. And then January 2020, got engaged. In September 2020, we got married. Initially, I didn't know that my husband was going to be my husband. I had a lot of respect for him, thought he was cool, but like at first I did not know. I did used to joke sometimes and be like, I won't be surprised if I end up with him. And also, I was one of those Christian women, and maybe it's not just Christian women, I don't know, but I would have multiple dreams that I was married to different men. Like I would have a dream I was married to somebody and I thought that was supposed to be my husband, but it wasn't, and so I was like always confused. But getting back on the topic, one of the things my husband did that made him stand out from every other guy was the fact that he said, hey, I like you, but first let's spend time becoming friends. If that goes well, then maybe we can get in a relationship. And if that goes well, I could see you being my wife. He was speaking my kind of language. So we did that. And then before he asked me to be his girlfriend, he said, hey, let's spend some time praying and fasting and just see, let's consult with God first and see what he says. And God gave us the clearance. Up to that point, I had so much assurance, but the thing about my husband that really, really stood out was his character. I would think to myself, like, the way that my husband treats me is the way that I feel like God treats me. Like the way my husband makes me feel is the same way God makes me feel. And my husband was just like, and still is, like the purest person I know. Like does not talk bad about people, does not drag people, loves to serve others, super dependable, very patient. I'm talking all the fruits of the spirit. Like sometimes I look at him and I'm like, I'm such a villain because like I am nothing like that. But he's just so in tune with God. And so I'm always telling like single girls, friends, whoever, like always pay attention to a man's character. And I'm just grateful that God gave me somebody who is just so special, so sweet, so amazing, and who is really a man after his own heart.
Want to know how I knew my husband was the one for me? Let's talk about it. I think you hear a lot in movies and often from some couples that you know when you know. If you ask my husband, that's what he will say. That he just knew that I was going to be his wife and he wanted to be with me. I love that man, but I did not have that experience. I was really skeptical of the concept of like, you know when you know, and like you could just feel it in your bones when someone's meant to be with you. I really don't believe in that. But there were some key moments in our relationship that I think tipped the hat for me. One is that he was incredibly respectful. My parents teased me a lot, and even when they would be like, oh, Hira is really irritating or annoying, even with my parents he would push back. Could not hear bad things being said about me. I vetted him through my friends and my family. He was able to hold conversations with my friends for hours. My best friend still times you FaceTime. She's like, where's Zeb? Where's my Zebby boy? First time we had met, taking a trip to New York with all of our siblings, and we went to Grand Central Station. He looked after my brothers so carefully. Like he would make them walk in front to make sure he had eyes on them at all times. Took the long route home so that my little brother could see the NBA store. It was like little things like that that I didn't ask him to do that he was very mindful about. One thing about me is that if I see like an animal on the street or a person that needs help, like really hard for me not to stop and try to assist in some way. And I had been around doctors in particular who, if they were not on call, basic decency didn't apply to them. One of the first things I noticed about Zeb was that when we had gone to Grand Central Station, there was a man who was struggling with homelessness, looked like he might need help, and Zeb kept looking back at that man, like just kept turning around to see like, do you think that man needs help? Do you think he needs something? The fact that it really bothered him to see someone he didn't know struggling, and he paused so many times to think, what can I do to kind of contribute to helping the situation, really stood out to me. And then there was another time we had like our first big kind of argument, and at the time I was being really obnoxious, and he sat with me and we talked it out. We were together for like 3 years before we got married. He could take me from really angry or really sad to like neutral and calm. And even if everything wasn't perfectly solved, I felt very calm and very safe, and I felt very cared for by him. But I mean, at no point was this like, this is my dream man, this is everything I ever wanted. There's a lot of things that each of us does that bugs the other or creates conflict, but at the end of the day, I have seen again and again at moments of crisis, when I'm really mad or really upset, not only is he really calm, even when I'm being unreasonable, he's just always very, very respectful. And at the end of the day, you do not have to see completely eye to eye with someone. You don't have to find someone with your same exact interests and all of that. But I think if you have a lot of deep mutual respect for each other and your friends and family, their opinion you trust, also can see through some of the BS that some people try to put forward. But I think my mom was really confident and my friend's really confident that this person is going to take very good care of you. That has been true. He is currently out getting me breakfast while I'm getting ready for my interview today. I usually go to sleep later than him, and any time that he goes to sleep, he always turns my bedside light on so that I don't have to see in the dark, and he wears a little sleep mask. When he goes out and he sees nice pastries, he'll bring one home for us to try together. And it's little things that someone notices about you that I think make a big difference. And another big key thing that I can talk a whole other video about is in-laws. They make a world of a difference. But anyway, we can talk more about that in another video. So I don't know if that was helpful. It's not a cookie cutter 3-part test. I don't think finding your person is like your heart is beating out of your chest and it's magical and it's beautiful. For me, it was a really rational decision. Is this person going to always treat me with respect? Is he going to support my career? How is this person going to be as a parent if you have children one day? And I think you can have a lot of differences if you have deep respect for one another. Those things are just background noise. Anyway, I hope that's helpful. Love you, bye.
All right, now let's get into it. Let's dive straight in. One thing that really stood out for me was how all of these women used God as their guide in finding their partner. Now, how can I put this without offending anyone? Just hear me out. I am not one that really sticks to one religion I'm not one that sticks to one religion and rides with it till the wheels fall off. However, I do respect people that are spiritual. I do respect people that are religious as well. So it really stood out to me how all these women used God as their guide in finding their partner. They prayed for guidance, they prayed for wisdom, and they also prayed for discernment. And they trusted that God would lead them to the right person. And in all honesty, in this time and age, I think that's really beautiful, because it just shows how they were really seeking something more than just a physical or emotional connection. They wanted something real. They wanted something deep. And they were seeking a spiritual connection, and they were trusting that God would bring them together with someone who shared their values and beliefs. And this is something very important. Now, one of the women talked about how she prayed to God to break the soul tie she had with her ex-partner before she met her new one. So let's talk about what a soul tie is for those that don't understand. So a soul tie is basically a deep emotional connection between two people, and it can be formed through a romantic relationship, a friendship, or even a family relationship. But it's a connection that goes beyond just physical attraction or emotional attachment. It's basically a connection that can be very intense and very powerful. But all in all, it can also be very toxic if it is not healthy. So, for example, if you are in a relationship with someone who is abusive or manipulative, you can form a soul tie with them that can be very hard to break. So, if I was to rip the band-aid off and not sound politically correct, a soul tie is basically a bond that you form when you get intimate with someone, It is more like your souls lock, or as the term says, your souls tie together, and you're sort of temporarily stuck with this person, right? So that's why it is so important to be careful with who you form connections with. Now, if you're not spiritual and you don't believe in this, all power to you. But for my girlies, or for the guys that are watching that are spiritual and religious, you know exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about how soul-tie connections are very deep and very intense and very powerful. And in addition, if you find yourself in a situation where you need to break a soul tie, it's not always easy. It can take a lot of prayer and fasting just to, because I mean, your soul is connected to that person, right? So it can take a lot of prayer, a lot of self-reflection, and a lot of support from loved ones. However, it is possible and it is very necessary for you to break a soul tie if you want to move on and find a healthy relationship. So kudos to that woman who really took her time. And I also find it interesting that she asked God for signs, to say, God, sign number one should be this, sign number two should be that. And it's amazing how God revealed herself to her. So another woman talked about how she prayed to God and asked God to give her signs. Now, this is so important because it shows that she was seeking guidance and wisdom from God. She was not just, lack of a better term, relying on her own. She wasn't relying on her own feelings or intuition. She was seeking a higher power to guide her and give her direction, basically to navigate her through the situation, right? And here is where it's important. When we seek God's guidance, we can trust that He will give us signs and direction. I know I talked about it just a few seconds ago with the situation with the other woman, but it might not always be easy to see and understand, but it's always there if we are looking for it. So God knows us. I mean, He formed us from birth, right? So he knows exactly what will work for us. And it's important that when we pray and ask God for signs and wonders and physical signs of a partner, it's important that we work on God's timing and not our own timing, right? So as I said, it might not always be easy to see and understand, but it's always there if we are looking for it, if we are patient with it. Another woman talked about how she knew her husband was the one because he treated her the same way that God treats her. And this is so beautiful. In case you didn't hear this properly, let me say it again. She said she knew rather her husband was the one because her husband basically treated her the same way that God treats her. Now, God is perfect, right? And I know it's very hard to emulate perfection, especially since we are not perfect human beings ourselves. But I think this is so beautiful because it shows that she was looking for someone who would love her and treat her with the same kindness and compassion that God does. That's how you know a woman really knows what she wants. And when we find someone who loves and treats us like that, it's truly a very, very special thing. It's a reflection of God's love for us, and it's a reminder that we are worthy of love and respect. And it's important to build that on your own, but it's amazing when someone comes into your life and reaffirms that. Now, this woman also mentioned that her husband was in tune with God. I think this is so important because it shows that her husband was seeking a deeper connection with God. And since she was a Jesus girly, it was good to see that this went hand in hand with what she envisioned for herself. He wasn't just going through the emotions of, sorry, he wasn't just going through the motions of religion. He was seeking a real authentic relationship with God. And that's very, very important. And when we find someone who is in tune with God, like the situation that I am just from explaining, it's truly a special thing. It's truly a special thing. And it's also a reminder that we are not alone in this world. We have a God who loves and cares for us, and we have people around us who can support and encourage us. Another woman talked about how she knew her husband was the one because he was very respectful. Now, I think this is so important because it shows that he valued and respected her as a person. He just didn't see her as an object or a possession. Most men, I might get attacked for this. I'm not saying all men, disclaimer, I'm not saying all men, but most men get into marriage just for the functionality of it, to say, oh, she'll be there to cook for me, she'll be there to clean for me, she'll be there to birth children for me as long as I'm a provider and I would have balanced both parts of the equation, right? So it's beautiful when you find a husband that is that shows you that you're valued and that you're respected as a person. And he also saw her as a partner and an equal, not someone that he would want to put dominion over. And when we find someone who respects us like that, it's really, truly a special thing. I mean, we all want love, don't we? It's a reminder that we are all worthy of love and respect. So this woman also mentioned that her husband was generous and helpful, as we could see in the scenario that he gave. For example, she shared a story about how he was genuinely concerned about the well-being of a homeless man. Doesn't that just warm your heart? Doesn't every time I see generosity, it warms my heart. So I can just imagine how this woman was feeling. And I think this is so important because it shows that he has a heart for others, not just for her, but for others. And he was not just focused on himself and his own needs. He was not narcissistic. He was also thinking about how he can help and serve others. And when we find someone who has a heart for others like that, it's really, truly a special thing. And it's a reminder that we are called to love and serve others. This woman also mentioned that she feels calm and safe around her husband. When looking to get into any form of relationship, whether it's a marriage, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a business partnership, I always ask myself three questions. And these three questions are: do I feel safe around this person? By safe, I mean, do I feel safe financially? Do I feel safe spiritually? Do I feel safe emotionally? Am I able to express myself to this person without feeling judged? And the other question that I ask is, do I feel like I can do more when I'm around this person? So the fact that this woman in particular felt calm and safe around her husband or around her partner at the time just shows that this was something really special for her. And I think this is so important because it shows that she feels secure and protected in the relationship. She's not just feeling anxious and on the edge, but she feels calm and at peace. And I'm sure that is what that is something that we all want as humans in general, right? And when we find someone who makes us feel like that, it's really a special thing. It's a reminder that we deserve to feel safe and loved in our relationship. Now, finally, one of the women mentioned that she used rational decision making to find her husband. And I think this is so important because it shows that she was thinking clearly and logically about her decision. She wasn't just following her emotions and her intuition. She was also using her rational thinking skills to evaluate the relationship. And that's something that's very important. And when we use rational decision making in our relationships, it can help us make better choices. And it can also help us avoid getting caught up in emotions or impulses. In addition, it can also help us think more clearly and logically about our decisions. So, thanks everyone for watching. I hope this video has been helpful and informative. I want to encourage all of you to take some time to reflect on your own relationships. Are there any areas where you feel like you're settling or compromising? Or are there any areas where you feel like you're being called to grow or change? I would also like to encourage you to seek God's guidance and wisdom in your relationship. He has a plan for you and He wants to guide you into healthy, loving relationships. And the Bible clearly tells us that um, God always wants the best for us. He has plans for us to prosper. He's got plans for us to do better in life. And I also want to hear some of your stories. How did you know that your partner is currently the one? So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. And if you have any stories or experiences you would like to share, please leave them in the comments below. And I would love to hear from you and about your own experiences with relationships and faith. For now, it's goodbye from me. I know this has been a very long video, but thank you for sticking through. I'll see you in the next one.